Greetings, my name is Tiki J, and today we are going to be learning about one-point perspective. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the materials that we're going to be using. What I'll be using is a pencil, I'll be using an L-shaped ruler, I will also be using a T-square, a yardstick is also helpful, and I will also have a transparent ruler. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to try to find the center of the page. And the way that we can find the center of the page is that we can draw an X from corner to corner. And wherever the X's cross is where the center of the page is. Alright, now that we have the X on the page, what we can do now is we can draw the horizon line. I'm going to use my L-shaped ruler for that. And what you want to do is you want to take one of the edge of the L-shaped ruler and put it flush to the side of the page. This way you are guaranteed to have an absolute horizontal line. After we draw the horizon line, what we want to do is we want to draw a vertical line from the center of the page down to the viewing point, which is off of the page. Okay, so after we establish the viewing point, what we want to do is we want to use a 45-degree angle triangle. I didn't bring these up in the materials, so don't forget them when you start to do this project. Now that we have this triangle, the way that we're going to use it is we're going to take one edge of the triangle and put the point on the horizon line and put it flush to the edge of the page. After we do that, we're going to draw a line from that point all the way down to the viewer point. Now that we have our diagonal line set up going to the viewer point, what we want to do is we want to measure off marks down at the bottom of the page, which is actually the edge of the picture plane. So we want to make these measurements from the center of the page to the left and the center of the page to the right. The measurement for each mark will be 2.75 inches. So now that we have our marks at the bottom of the picture plane, what we want to go ahead and do is we want to draw a line from the vanishing point to each one of these marks. We don't want to draw them too dark because then it might overpower the drawing, so go ahead and keep your lines light. If your lines were going to make a sound, make the sound like a whisper. So now that we have all our lines drawn to the marks at the bottom of the picture plane, we have established our ground plane, but there is something missing. We're going to need our horizontal lines to go across so that we can start to see how the grid forms. So the way that we find our horizontal lines is we look at the diagonal line and where it intersects the lines drawn from the vanishing point to the marks at the bottom of the picture plane. And as you can see, we have 3 marks right here. And what I will do is I will take my L-shaped ruler put the edge flush up to the edge of the page, and then I will line it up where the lines intersect, and I will go ahead and draw my horizontal lines. Okay, so now what we're going to do to add more lines to the ground plane is we're going to use what's called a framing technique, and we're going to be using a double framing technique for this. As soon as you draw your X within the grid square point, what you're going to want to do is take the center of the X and draw that to your vanishing point. You want to make sure that this is a construction line and it's kind of light. Remember, like a whisper. If your line was going to make a sound, it would be a whisper. Now, the way to find the next place where you're going to draw your horizontal line is you're going to start by drawing from the corner of the grid point where your X is and drawing where the center line intersects the top point of that grid. After you draw through that center point, what you're going to do is you're going to stop when you hit the ground plane line that's going to the vanishing point. Now that we have the ground plane established, what we're going to want to do now is try to find the ceiling plane. To find the ceiling plane, what I'm going to use is my L-shaped ruler, and I'm going to use the marks at the bottom of the picture plane and create marks at the top of the picture plane. Again, all I have to do is use my ruler and leave a little notch at the top. We do not need to draw a line from the bottom to the top, not even a light one, just leave a mark at the top. As soon as the marks are established at the top of your ceiling plane, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to draw lines from the marks on the ceiling plane to the vanishing point. Now that we've established the vanishing point lines on the ceiling plane, what we can do now is we can start working on the sidewall. And again, remember, if you do not go in this particular order, your grid might not work out. The place that we find where the vertical lines are going to go are where the ground plane line intersects the horizontal lines on the last line that's going to the vanishing point on the right side. From this point, we're going to draw vertically to the last line of the ceiling plane line that goes to the vanishing point as well. So now that our vertical lines are established, what we want to do is we want to try to find the horizontal lines that are going to the vanishing point upon the sidewall. The way that we're going to find these horizontal lines is we are going to use the diagonal line that we used from the triangle, and wherever that diagonal line intersects the vertical lines, we know that that's going to be a point to line up our ruler with the vanishing point to create the horizontal lines. After a while, you're going to lose intersecting points, so you won't be able to establish any more horizontal lines. But if we can use the method that we used earlier, the double framing system, we can go ahead and establish more horizontal lines. So the double framing system we're going to use is pretty similar to how we used it on the ground plane. Now, as you can see on the ground plane, we drew from the center point to the vanishing point. Now, when we're using it on the sidewall, what we want to do is we want to use the center of the X and we want to draw vertically to the top of the page. That way we can find the center of the top of that grid that we're going to draw through. And again, so what we're going to do is we're going to draw from the corner through the center point, and wherever that center point hits the next vertical line will be the point in which we draw the next horizontal. Remember, do not be over precise. If it doesn't look like it's working out in a graduated fashion, it probably will not. So just try to be a little loose, not too precise, and everything should work out for you. Okay, so now that we have the sidewall established, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and try to work on the ceiling plane. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the vertical lines from the sidewall, and wherever they stop to meet the ceiling plane is where we're going to use the L-shaped ruler to create the horizontal lines across the top. Alright, so now we're looking pretty good. It looks like we have a ground plane here, looks like we have a sidewall, and it looks like we're starting to get a ceiling. So the only thing missing right now is the left sidewall and the back of our grid. To find the vertical lines on the left sidewall, we are going to use the horizontal lines from the ground plane and the horizontal lines from the ceiling plane, and we're simply going to use our transparent ruler or any other kind of ruler that you have to line them up. Now that we have our left side wall established, what we want to do is we want to create the back wall. And the back wall will be a cross section that will use the ground plane and the ceiling plane, as well as the left wall and the side wall. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to try to find where the points on the ground plane meet the back wall and line them up with each other. I'm going to work horizontally first and establish these lines across the back. Now remember that these lines need to be absolutely horizontal or else they're not going to work out. And also remember that there's room for human error when we're drawing things like this. So if the lines are just a little bit off, go ahead and make readjustments. That way we can go ahead and move on. Almost done. Looks like we got almost the whole grid done, and all we need now is the horizontal lines on the left side wall. Now, you see where you drew the horizontal lines for the back of the wall? Wherever they meet the back corner of the wall plane is where you're going to line up your ruler with the vanishing point and that point to create your horizontal lines. Well, it looks like we have a finished grid here, but I don't think it's quite finished. It's kind of hard to see things because the light lines are all kind of competing with each other. So what we're going to want to do now is try to exercise a little bit of line weight. When we use line weight, we want to try to guide the viewer's eye so that it doesn't get lost in all the lines. In this drawing here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the bottom corners and establish where the ceiling meets the walls, and I'm going to establish where the back wall is. Success! Looks like we finished. Good job. So if we did everything right, we should have something that looks like a gridded cube. And so from this gridded cube, I want to show you how we can use this in real time to create a drawing. Where I teach, we have a lot of hallways. And so I want to show you how we can push this wall back and create a new wall further down the line in this one-point perspective. I'm going to use the transparent ruler, and I'm going to start to try to create depth in the drawing. Now that we have the hallway looking like it's further back, what we want to do now is we want to draw some things, like doors. So I'm going to use the vertical line of my grid to start the door out, and then I'm going to use the horizontal line going to the vanishing point to establish the top of the door, and another vertical line of the grid to secure the other side. Now, don't forget that just because you've done this doesn't exactly mean it's a door. We need to go ahead and give it some depth and some 3D so that it'll look convincing in the drawing. Now, I want to push this hallway back even further to create a sense of super depth. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw something in the back, something like a painting. In the hallways we have here at school, there's paintings in the back, so I want to show how we can create a painting back here so it'll create the illusion of depth in your drawing. Just to draw another element closer to the viewer, on this other side wall, what we'll do is we'll put another painting here. And again, I'm going to use the vertical lines of the grid, and I'm going to use the horizontal lines that go to the vanishing point, and that's how I'm going to establish the first frame of my picture that's sitting on the wall. Now again, don't think that you're finished with the picture just because the 4 lines are done. What we want to do is we want to use our horizontal lines to create depth, to create the frame, make it have a thickness, and we also want to put some lines on the inside of the frame here so that there's depth inside of the frame as well. So even though these are just a few elements, you can see how using this one-point grid can create a convincing hallway or one-point perspective in an environment, whether it's an interior or an exterior. Yo, this is Tiki J, what up? Thank you for watching the video. If you like this video, please go ahead and like it and subscribe, and don't forget to tell your friends.